Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to react on a video of exorcism, which was quite a famous case back in Germany.
And it is the exorcism of Anneliese Michel.
So let's go ahead without waiting any second now.
Born in 1952 in the small town of Klingenberg in Bavaria, Germany, Anneliese Michel was raised as a strict Catholic and was described as very bright and likable. In September 1968, when Anneliese was 16 years old, she experienced her first episode of losing consciousness, and later that night, she felt as if something was pressing down on her chest, pinning her to her bed. 11 months later, in August 1969, a similar event occurred, and her mother took Anneliese to their family doctor, Dr. Vogt, and a neurologist, Dr. Luthi, who examined her and even ran an EEG, a brain scan, but found nothing wrong. They hypothesized that it could possibly be a form of seizure. Over the next 3 years, Anneliese would have 2 more similar episodes and was prescribed 2 medications, an anticonvulsant medication and an anti-seizure medication called Dilantin. On both occasions, an EEG would come back normal, with some minor irregular patterns, but nothing that would definitively explain her symptoms.
Here we can find in the beginning of her first episode that was a kind of a sleep paralysis effect, where the jinn was actually on her and making her feel that heaviness, and she was losing consciousness. So that was one of the signs of a house being haunted.
Yes.
The second most important aspect, that she was a very bright student, could also attract her to the very issue of
ain.
Yeah, a lot of evil eye and envy, that because we know that when evil eye affects a person, then that person can be easily afflicted by jinn possession. The another most important aspect that I see into this very story is the doctors have been involved, a neurologist have been involved. So, and the medical aspects are all clear. This is what is one of the most important signs in the issue of a spiritual ailment.
Yes.
That the medical science will tell you that everything is okay, but still the person is going through events and episodes that are horrific.
And that is a clear sign that this is about spiritual ailments.
Yes.
It was in spring 1973 that things took a turn for the stranger. Anneliese began to hear knocking sounds in her bedroom, sounds her sisters would hear as well. But even more alarming, Anneliese also reported hearing a voice damning her to hell. Her mother was further rattled when she witnessed Anneliese furiously staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary with, quote, eyes turned black, jet black, and her hands seemed to turn into thick paws with claws.
Oh my goodness, subhanallah. Subhanallah, knocking sounds are a very clear sign that the house is haunted. No doubt about that.
Indeed, because even the other sisters were able to hear the same sound.
Yes, and unfortunately, she was being the target of the jinn possession and the jinn issues. The next most important thing, did you see that she was staring and her eyes turned black? I never experienced that kind of an issue with jinn possession.
Me neither. What I've experienced a few times, not most, few times, it turns white.
Oh, subhanallah. But yeah, we know that there is an effect on the eyes, and that is quite very clear out there. But we haven't come across
black eyes.
In September 1973, in a neurological visit with Dr. Luthi, Anneliese described horrific visions of demon faces that were tormenting her and stated that she felt the devil was inside her. She also reported smelling something that had the aroma of burnt feces, a stench that many around her would report smelling at later times.
Look at the years being spent. It was started in 1968, where she had the first episode, and it went to almost 5 years down the line, right?
Yes.
So it's a long time where the jinn possession issues was
started to take root, and
yeah, it can get more horrific. And that's where she started to find these issues even more tormenting, where she's looking at demon faces, meaning to say that there could also be possible where there are more number of jinn entering into her body.
Subhanallah. And the smell of the burnt.
I experienced some of the patients, they have mentioned to me that they would find something
like a charcoal.
Yeah, like the charcoal smell. And with the treatments, Alhamdulillah, it went away. So yeah, that's also possible.
Around this time, Anneliese's mother described these strange occurrences to Dr. Luthi, who, according to Mrs. Michel, advised them to consult a Jesuit, a claim that Dr. Luthi would later deny.
Yeah, that's a bad doctor.
Yeah, I mean, if he said that,
Don't go see it.
that's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not that's true, the family definitely searched for a priest and eventually found a priest named Father Alt. In November 1973, Anneliese met with a Freudian psychiatrist who diagnosed her as a neurotic with possible epilepsy, and another neurologist found she had, quote, epileptic patterns, and took her off Dilantin and put her on Tegretol, a much stronger drug. In July 1975, Anneliese's extremely odd behavior worsened. She barely slept and prayed fervently all night. She ate spiders and flies, and even licked her own urine up from the floor. She destroyed rosaries, crucifixes, and holy pictures on the walls. Anneliese also exhibited strength that was, quote, close to superhuman, throwing her sister, quote, as if she were a rag doll, and incredibly was observed effortlessly squeezing an apple with one hand until, quote, fragments exploded throughout the room.
I bet
The case had long been now
It started to become worse and complete overtaken by the jinn.
yeah, and a person, if he or she starts to eat spiders and flies, that's quite clear that the poor girl is not into her consciousness at all, and the jinn has completely overtaken the possession of the mind. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's not sleeping. She's not having food. All of those issues have.
This strategy is very common. Don't let the person sleep so that they can take more control over the person.
And that would destroy the health of that very person. And then she was exhibiting energy, which is very possible with the possession of the jinn. And when it overtakes the consciousness, the jinn strength would overcome, because the body of a human being does not possess such energy levels.
Yes, indeed.
So that's a very, very clear issue of jinn possession, which has come to the very high level.
Yes.
A priest named Father Rodewick, a man considered an expert on exorcisms by his peers, reported that he was convinced that Anneliese was possessed, and after deliberation with the bishop, an exorcism on Anneliese was formally approved. It was to be carried out by a priest named Father Renz. On September 24th, 1975, the first exorcism rite was performed. Father Renz allowed some of the exorcism sessions to be recorded, and 42 audio recordings of the exorcisms were made in total. I'm gonna play some clips from those recordings, but fair warning, these recordings are perhaps the most disturbing pieces of audio I've ever heard.
Ich hab Recht dazu, dass ich in dem Wald rein bin. Ich trag dir die Rotznase noch so lang, bis es lebt wird. Die saublöde Weib. Für uns gibt's kein Zurück. Nee! In alle Ewigkeit!
Actually, the recordings of the
Different
exorcism
voice. Yeah.
appears to be more horrifying than in reality.
Yeah, true. And the change of voice definitely shows that it's the jinn speaking. That scream and that kind of sound that they create is to basically make a person fear psychologically. But that's not really scary
Exactly.
for a Raaqi at least.
Judas, der Nero, der Kain und der Hitler. Fünf Stimmen.
Here again, the number of jinn that are in the body are being named as 4 to 5 of them, I believe.
Yes.
And yeah, that's quite very possible. The number of jinn can even be more than
that.
5.
Yes.
Anneliese also named Fleischmann as one of her demons and provided accurate details of the real Fleischmann, who was a priest in the 1500s that was kicked out of the church for bad behavior. These details came as an icy shock to Father Alt, who claims Anneliese would have no way of knowing Fleischmann.
Well, this very concept that the hovering spirits of dead people can possess a human being is wrong, according to the Islamic perspective, because Islam teaches that once the soul is out from a human being, it goes to the place which has been kept for the souls, and it does not have the right to
Wander around.
wander around.
Yes.
But we know that these are jinn, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said into the Quran, that we have created the jinn and the mankind to worship Him alone. So it's the jinn which can possess the human beings.
And they can inform about the people who have passed before.
Yeah,
It's a
because
common knowledge.
because their age is
far
much
more.
more longer than we humans live. So yeah, they can mention people whom they have seen earlier, and
And-
they can fake up their names as well,
Indeed.
unless being diagnosed and understood in the right perspective.
And they are only talking about the person they're interested to.
No, whom they know.
Exactly.
By May, Anneliese became even worse, banging her head against the wall and biting herself and others, to the point where her family had to tie her up to prevent her from hurting herself. But most dangerously, Anneliese refused to eat. She described it as, quote, not being permitted to eat. Despite being quite frail, likely weighing under 80 pounds, she exhibited great strength when people tried to restrain her.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the jinn possession issue was not able to be resolved.
From bad to worse.
Yeah, so it became from bad to worst, and she became thin. She lost a lot of weight. She became weak, and the jinn possessing the mind control had gone to the very aspect that she is not into her consciousness at all.
And it's quite sad.
It's quite sad, and the number of years, by the passing year, it's becoming more critical.
By June, Annelise's entire face was sunken. She also refused a doctor visit, even though she had a very high fever. On June 30th, Anneliese had another exorcism, only saying please, absolution. The next morning, her family went to her room and found her dead. Despite seeking medical attention early on, Anneliese refused to submit to medical attention in the end, as she and her family ultimately placed all faith of recovery into the exorcisms. She died of starvation at the age of 23 after 67 exorcisms, weighing only 68 pounds at the time of her death.
So
Yeah, just as we have thought,
yeah, and the jinns were quite there to, you could say, to take the life of this little girl. From the age of 16 to the age of 23,
23.
she suffered a lot.
now this is quite important aspect here. A lot of people don't think that jinns can take life.
Yeah, you have the example out there. And we have also come across some cases where the jinn took the life of the patients. It was very hard for us to see such cases. So, yeah, I mean, this case gives an very, very chilling exorcism that the treatment on time could have saved her life.
And even staying in horror at places that are haunted by the jinns is not advisable unless a proper steps are taken to remove these jinns.
So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from the shar, from the evil of the jinn and the shayateen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give shifa to all of those suffering from the spiritual ailments. Until we come back, if you have any further questions or any horrific events that you went through and you want us to react, do share us in the comments and tell us what did you think about this very case. Until we meet next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.